Imagine being locked inside your school during a real lockdown, and the stranger everyone is searching for is already in the room with you. That's exactly what happened during my senior year of high school. It was my final spring. Semester and I had already finished most of the classes I needed to graduate. Because of that, I had one extra period during the day that was basically a free study hour. I had an entire classroom to myself. Most days, I didn't even study. I'd just sit there playing games on my phone. It was third period, so I couldn't leave school early. But it was still a nice break in the middle of the day. One afternoon, I actually had homework to finish. I sat down and started working. About 20 minutes passed. And then I heard something that instantly changed the mood. 039. An announcement suddenly came over the school. Intercom. The school was going into lockdown. Everyone was instructed to lock their doors immediately and return to their classrooms. At first, I wasn't even sure if it was real. Our school had already had 2 previous lockdowns that turned out to be false alarms. Still, I walked over and shut the door. The classroom I was in sat in a quiet wing of the school far away from the locker, commons, and cafeteria. So I figured nobody would even come down that hallway. I went back to my homework. But I'll admit, something about the situation still made me uneasy. 0 07. Then, suddenly, someone knocked on the classroom door. I walked over and saw a kid standing in the hallway. I opened the door, and he immediately told me he had just seen a man walk in through the hallway. The kid looked panicked. He explained that he had gone out to get a drink of water and saw an older guy walking toward him. The guy looked creepy enough that he didn't want to walk back past him to reach his classroom, so I let him inside. We locked the door. I turned off the lights and both of us moved to the back corner of the room. The classroom went completely dark. We sat there in total silence. After a few minutes, I leaned over and whispered, asking him what his name was, but he didn't answer. When I looked over, he was gone. Before I could even process that, there was another knock at the door. My heart started racing. I slowly walked toward the door and pressed my ear against it. That's when I heard a voice on the other side say one word: police. I opened the door. Several officers were standing there. One of them immediately pulled me out of the room. I had no idea what was going on until I saw them walk back inside. Moments later, they came back out, this time escorting the same kid I had just let in. They led him away. That's when the officers explained something that still gives me chills. The boy I had let into the room wasn't a student there anymore. He had graduated 2 years earlier. He had returned to the school that day and made several threats before a staff member spotted him in the building. And some bro. I had just spent the entire lockdown alone in a classroom with him. But that wasn't the only terrifying lockdown story from that school. A year earlier, something even worse happened. During my senior year, the school had converted an old abandoned classroom into a new testing room. It was placed at the very back of the building. I had missed a math test because I was home for 2 days with an ear infection. When I came back, my teacher told me I could make it up during study hall in that room. He trusted me enough to take the test by myself. So I walked all the way across the school to the far end of the building and sat down to start the exam. It was a short test, but an important one. I had just reached the 3rd question when the phone in the room started ringing. I assumed it was my teacher calling to check on me, so I walked over and answered it. But instead of my teacher, the voice on the other end said something that instantly made my stomach drop. The school was going into lockdown again. There was a suspicious person somewhere inside the building, and I was completely alone. No classroom next to me, just locker rooms and an empty hallway. I locked the door like I was told. Then I glanced down the hallway. It was silent, empty. I turned the lights off and sat near the back of the room, using my phone screen to try finishing the test, but I couldn't focus. Then, suddenly, the door to the room slowly opened. My heart nearly stopped. That's when I realized something terrifying. I had forgotten to lock the door. I quickly slid underneath the table. From the floor, I could see a faint strip of light coming from the doorway. And then I saw them. Boots. Someone had just walked in. I held my breath, terrified to make even the smallest sound. The person stood there for several seconds. Then the door quietly shut. Footsteps moved deeper into the room. My entire body was shaking. The room went silent. Then, suddenly, a computer crashed onto the floor. A man started screaming, not normal yelling. Full-on rage. He began smashing things around the room. Desks, equipment, anything he could get his hands on. I could hear everything happening across the room but couldn't see him clearly. That's when I realized something. The exit was directly in front of me. The man was across the room to the left. If I ran right now, I might actually make it. So I took one deep breath and sprinted Dot. Come on. I bolted from under the table and ran straight for the door. I nearly tripped over a chair but managed to keep moving. Behind me, I could still hear the man yelling and destroying things. I burst out of the classroom and ran down the hallway as fast as I could. Eventually, I reached the front of the school where I saw a police officer. I told them exactly where the man was. Another officer escorted me outside. Later, they told me they had caught him. I went home immediately after, and to this day, I still think about how close that situation could have gotten. But the strangest lockdown story happened during my freshman year. It was my last class of the day. Everything was normal until the classroom phone rang. Our teacher answered it. Then her expression completely changed. She told us the school was going into lockdown and that this one was not a drill. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and told us to move to the back of the room. Everyone started whispering. Nobody knew what was happening. The longer we waited, the more nervous everyone became. At one point, we heard footsteps walking down the hallway, but we couldn't see who it was. About 30 minutes later, the lockdown finally ended. School dismissed shortly after. When we walked outside, there were police cars everywhere, but nobody knew the full story yet. That night, my friend Robbie told me what had really happened. His mother worked at the school. Apparently, a student had reported seeing a strange man wandering the halls. When staff searched the building, they discovered one of the back doors had been left open. They believed the man had escaped before anyone could find him. The area around the school was searched, but the man was never caught. 09:13. The next day, everything seemed normal again. By third period, I'd almost forgotten about the whole thing. It was Friday, and all I cared about was going to the football game that night. During history class, I asked to go to the bathroom. The teacher allowed it. I walked down the hallway toward the restrooms near the end of the building. As soon as I opened the door, I froze. Standing right in front of me was a man I had never seen before. He was wearing a winter hat, long black hair, small beard. He looked just as surprised to see me as I was to see him. We stared at each other for a second. Then he started walking toward me. So I sprinted back to class and told the teacher what I had just seen. Within minutes, the school went into lockdown again. This time, it lasted more than an hour. Eventually, police caught the man inside the building. But the question that still bothers me is this. If they searched the school the day before, how did he stay hidden inside the building the entire time? Stories like this remind you that sometimes the most terrifying places are the ones you think are the safest. If you enjoy true stories like this, subscribe to Something You Did for more real cases that prove this. Moments often start with something